September 19th, 1944. The first American riflemen step out of the daylight and into the trees of the Hürtgen Forest. Among them is a combat medic from Philadelphia named Jacob Ruser. Decades later, when the Army asks him to name the worst battle he saw in Europe, he will name this forest. The battle that begins today will last 88 days, the longest the United States Army has ever fought on German soil. The Battle of Hürtgen Forest is about to begin. On the German border, 15 miles southeast of Aachen, lies a forest of 50 square miles. Division after division went into the trees, the 9th, the 28th, the 4th, the 8th. The terrain favors the defenders. Deep ravines, steep ridges, and firs so dense that daylight barely reaches the ground. By December, the forest had claimed 33,000 American casualties. The line had moved 6 kilometers. Since Normandy, the American Army has won its battles with movement, artillery, and air power. In the Hürtgen, none of these work. Tanks cannot maneuver between the trees. Artillery bursts in the canopy. Aircraft cannot see the ground. The objective lies beyond the forest, the Siegfried Line, and the road into Germany. The commanders decide the forest must be cleared. Ruser serves as an aide man with the 12th Infantry Regiment. His wars fought over short distances, the ground between the aid station and the men who need him. By his own account, about 300 feet. In open country, that is a 5-minute walk. In the Hürtgen, it runs through shell fire. Between trees, the Germans have had months to prepare. The forest itself contains nothing worth taking. No factories, no cities, no crossroads of consequence. What matters lies south of the trees, where the Roer River is held back by 2 dams, the Urft and the Schwammenauel. Together their reservoirs hold some 40 billion gallons of water. Every American road to the Rhine crosses the Roer downstream of them. If the Germans open the spillways while an army is crossing, the flood sweeps away the bridges, and every man already on the far bank is cut off. The Americans do not enter the forest knowing this. The first divisions are sent in to protect the flank of the advance on the Rhine. The dams appear in none of their orders. Not until November 11th, almost 8 weeks into the battle, does First Army put it in writing. No unit will advance beyond the Roer until the dams are dealt with. The object of the battle has changed while the battle is being fought. The fighting in the trees goes on either way. October 6th, 1944. The 9th Infantry Division attacks through the center of the forest, the 39th Infantry Regiment on the left, the 60th on the right. Their objectives are villages, Germeter, Wassenack, and beyond the gorge of the Kall River, on its ridge, the town of Schmidt. The attack lasts 10 days. It moves the line an average of 3,500 yards. It costs 4,410 battle casualties, and nearly 1,000 more to sickness and injury. The 9th Division is pulled out of the line. Schmidt has not fallen. The pattern establishes itself and holds. A division enters the forest at strength. The trees strip away its advantages. Armor, air support, observed artillery fire. German shells fuse to burst in the canopy, send steel and splintered wood straight down into the men below. Going to ground, the standard defense, is exactly wrong. The men learn to stand upright against the trunks instead, and let their helmets take what falls. The division grinds forward, burns out, and is replaced. The next division enters expecting to succeed where the last one failed. It meets the same forest. Among the men of the 22nd Infantry Regiment is a correspondent from Collier's magazine, a friend of the regimental commander named Ernest Hemingway. He watches the regiment lose 2,678 men in 18 days, 82% of its strength, to gain 6,000 yards of forest. Asked later what the Hürtgen was like, he reaches back to the worst battlefield of the First World War. Passchendaele, he says. Passchendaele with tree bursts. The men defending the forest are not the German army of the newsreels. The 275th Division is a patchwork. Replacements, convalescents, men combed out of depots, short of vehicles, short of everything but ammunition and time to dig. In prepared bunkers, behind minefields, with the fire lanes registered, a patchwork is enough. Replacements come up at night, led through the dark to foxholes they have never seen. Some become casualties before the men around them learn their names. The rifle companies are rebuilt while they fight. The casualties concentrate in the rifle companies, the men actually among the trees. A company that enters the Hürtgen with 200 men can lose most of them in a week and remain, on the maps at headquarters, a company. For the medics, every one of those men must be reached, treated where he fell, and carried out by hand, down ravines, across fire lanes. Ruser's, 1,300 feet, again and again, in both directions. The weather does its own work. Cold rain, then sleet, then snow. Trench foot and exhaustion take men the shells never touch, 9,000 of them before the battle ends. November 2nd, 1944. The job of taking Schmidt passes to the 28th Infantry Division, Pennsylvania National Guard, the same men who had paraded down the Champs-Élysées in August. Their shoulder patch is a red keystone. German soldiers facing it in the forest call it the Bloody Bucket. The division is ordered to attack in 3 directions at once: 1 regiment north, 1 south, and 1, the 112th, east through Wassenack and across the gorge to Schmidt. The attack is set for the 2nd of November. On the map at 1st Army, it stands alone, 1 division, attacking into the forest, with no other offensive anywhere on the front. The plan counts on the Germans committing their reserves here, before the main offensive opens later in the month. The route runs from Wassenack, down the wall of the gorge, and up the far side. The only supply line is a cart track cut into the face of the ravine, the Kall Trail, in places barely wider than a tank, with rock on one side and a drop on the other. Ammunition, rations, armor, litters, everything the men beyond the gorge will need has to come down this track. On November 3rd, the 3rd Battalion of the 112th Infantry climbs out of the gorge and takes Schmidt. The men are surprised at how easily it falls. They are now the deepest American penetration in the forest. At the end of a track, a mule can barely walk. They dig in for the night. At dawn on November 4th, German armor and infantry come back up the roads from Harscheid and Hasenfeld. The battalion in Schmidt has no tanks. 5 are struggling on the Kall Trail behind them, and only 3 ever reach Kammerscheid, the village in between. By mid-morning, Schmidt is lost. At Kammerscheid, Lieutenant Raymond Flake's Sherman knocks out a panther at close range, and roughly 200 men hold the village for 3 more days, while the trail behind them changes hands in the dark, night after night. On the ridge behind them, at Wassenack, the 2nd Battalion of the 112th holds a bald, exposed slope under German observation, 3 days and 4 nights of shelling in open holes. Company commanders report their men's nerves are gone. Officers have to order the men to eat. Some cry when they are told to stay in their foxholes. At dawn on November 6th, 1 company breaks, and then the position dissolves. By mid-morning, there are 70 men left on the line, out of a battalion. The town is taken back the next day by 2 companies of engineers, committed so fast they are still wearing the hip boots they had been issued for road repair. The Kall Trail is kept open, when it is open at all, by engineers working at night with hand tools, prying disabled tanks off the track while German patrols move through the same woods. Sergeant Anthony Spooner winches tanks around a shelf of rock in the dark, a few feet at a time. In the gorge, the aid station keeps working, a log dugout beside the trail, wounded from both armies inside. 3 times in 1 week, the shooting around it simply stops. An American sergeant who speaks French walks wounded men past a German sentry and shares his cigarettes. The regimental surgeon, Major Albert Behrendt, brings a convoy through under a white flag, and a German medical officer, Dr. Gunther Stuttgen, arranges a ceasefire directly with the Americans, so the wounded of both sides can be carried off the trail. Then the truces end, and the battle resumes. In under 2 weeks, the 28th Division loses 6,184 men. It is one of the most costly attacks by a single American division in the Second World War. On November 16th, the Americans opened their largest attack of the autumn, a general offensive toward the Roer, led by one of the heaviest air bombardments flown in support of ground troops in the entire war. In the forest, it falls to the 4th and 8th Infantry Divisions to finish what 4 divisions before them could not. The objectives are the same villages, the same ridges, the same roads. The town that gives the forest its name sits on a road junction in the southern half of the triangle. Above it stands Hill 401, and from its slopes, German guns cover every approach. The 1st Battalion of the 13th Infantry fights for weeks to take the hill. On November 28, 1944, the battalion secures Hill 401 and enters the town of Hürtgen. The place the battle is named for has fallen. The fighting has not stopped. It continues across the triangle into December, the 10th week, then the 11th, then the 12th. The army that entered the trees in late summer is now fighting in snow. The dams named as the object in November are still in German hands in December. The Royal Air Force tries to break them from the air. On December 8th, Lancasters dropped nearly 800 tons of bombs on the Schwammenau and the Erft. 18 strike home. The earthen dam absorbs them all and holds. So on December 13th, 3 fresh divisions attack toward the dams on the ground, through the frozen hills at the southern edge of the forest. In 2 days, they lose some 2,500 men, nearly half of them to cold and sickness. They are 3 days into that attack when, on the morning of December 16th, 25 German divisions come through the Ardennes, 30 miles to the south. The Battle of the Bulge has begun. The attack on the dam stops where it stands. 88 days after the first riflemen entered the trees, the Battle of Hürtgen Forest is over, not because the objective is taken, but because a larger battle has swallowed it. Within weeks, the Bulge fills the newspapers, then the histories, then the films. The Hürtgen is remembered by the men who fought there, and by few others. When the American army comes back for the dams, it is February 1945. The 78th Infantry Division reaches the Schwammenau on the 9th. The Germans do not blow the dam. They wreck its machinery instead. The discharge valves are destroyed, and the reservoir drains in a slow, deliberate flood that keeps the Roer impassable for 2 weeks. When the river finally falls, on the 23rd of February, the armies cross. The dams that 3 months of fighting in the forest never reached are taken in a matter of days. Most of those who have studied the battle since have reached the same conclusion. The dams could have been approached from the south, over open ground. The forest could have been left alone. Jacob Ruser came out of the trees, went home to Philadelphia, and lived a long life. When the army interviewed him decades later, his judgment was plain. Hürtgen Forest, in my opinion, was the worst battle the U.S. Army fought in W. Pors in the European theater of operations. The forest is still there.